people will take their seats, we're going to begin the hearing. Thank you very much. Welcome to today's hearing. We have 25 bills today on file. Two bills, AB 143 and AB 709, are on the consent calendar, and three bills, AB 532, AB 802, and AB 1085, have been pulled from today's agenda. So we have 20 bills to present today. We have a relatively long agenda. We don't quite have a quorum yet, and so we will begin as a subcommittee, and we are taking the votes in sign in order. And so our first bill is bill number AB 746 by Assemblymember Campos. Please welcome. That is item 21 on the agenda. Welcome. Please begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Today I am presenting AB 746, which is a simple bill to update our existing law on cyberbullying to include posting harmful information on a social network wall. Cyberbullying is the use of electronic devices and information to send or post harmful messages or images about an individual or a group. Here in California, the Education Code allows a school to suspend a student for bullying, including cyberbullying, when the acts are related to school. California's anti-bullying legislation was drafted in 2006 when social networking had not yet exploded in popularity and became an everyday part of life. Today, it seems everyone is a member of some online community, such as Twitter, MySpace, and Facebook. To show the increase in popularity, consider that in 2006, Facebook only had 20 million users. Today, Facebook alone reaches over 1 billion users worldwide. The increase in popularity has also brought an increase in abuse of social networks, often with triggers resulting. Recent news accounts of suicides of young people bullied by peers on social networks demonstrate the need for this legislation. The Education Code defines electronic acts to mean the transmission of a communication, including but not limited to a message, text, sound, or image by means of an electronic device, including but not limited to a telephone, wireless telephone, or other wireless communication devices, computer or pagers. However, this law does not expressly say that posting messages on a social network site is included in the definition. AB 746 will make the law clear that posting messages upon a social network site is covered under the Education Code anti-bullying provision. Madam Chair, I have some witnesses here, and now I would turn it over to the witnesses.
Thank you very much. And before you begin, I sort of forgot to call the rules of the House, and I'll allow 5 minutes in support of the bill and 5 minutes in opposition, and then I'll ask everyone to just state their name and organization and their position, and you can allot that time frame any way you see, as you see, and how you would like to proceed. So 5 minutes in support of the bill, 5 minutes opposed, and of course everyone does not need to utilize that time if it's not necessary in order to do so. And with that, we'll proceed. Thank you.
Thanks so much. My name is Barry Giardini, and I'm a staff attorney with the Human Rights Fair Housing Commission here in Sacramento. And I've been asked today to speak on behalf of this bill. The Human Rights Fair Housing Commission is a joint powers authority created by the Sacramento City and County to promote human rights in the region as well as fair housing. And in this vein, we've recently launched an anti-bullying campaign with the Southern Poverty and Law Center to educate people and to eradicate all forms of bullying, including cyberbullying. We recently passed a resolution through the City of Sacramento in order to reduce the incidence of bullying and to promote the encouragement of public schools in addressing this problem and to promote an anti-bullying pledge among the city's youth, which they did pass back in February. Cyberbullying has become an epidemic. There's a recent study by the Cyberbullying Research Center that indicates that over 20% of students in the study had been victims of cyberbullying. It was a study of over 4,400 students. I mean, but when you're talking over 20% of that, I mean, it's a pretty significant number. And cyberbullying is becoming more prevalent as we become more reliant on technology in our everyday communication. I read a headline just yesterday of a Scranton teenager who attempted suicide by jumping off a 40-foot bridge as a result of Facebook threats that she had received. Fortunately, she did survive, but there are many young people who do not survive, who do commit suicide as a result of cyberbullying. In one case last year, a New York high school student, just months away from his graduation, took his own life as a result of cyberbullying. So it's a significant problem. And as social networking has grown exponentially, as the Assembly member mentioned, Facebook is projected to be up over 1 billion users worldwide. California law has been on the cutting edge of trying to promote laws to stop cyberbullying, and the incidence of cyberbullying through social networks has seen an increase as social networking has become more prevalent. This simple bill will keep California up to date with a massive cultural shift towards social networking, and it will provide at least some protection to the countless youths who are affected through this growing form of cyberbullying. So I respectfully urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness, please.
Ernie Silva on behalf of Sciatec High Schools, the dropout recovery schools at the Job Corps centers. We're in support.
Thank you. Next witness.
Nancy Vandal, California State PTA. Bullying and cyberbullying are extremely high priorities for us, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Triguero, California Teachers Association. We are processing a support position. We urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Madam Chair, Jeff Frost, representing the California Association of School Psychologists, in support, and also the California School Library Association. I would just note that just a few months ago, the State Board of Education adopted model school library standards, which are on the State Department of Ed website. There is an entire section related to cyber safety there that all schools can use as a model.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Andrew Keller with K Street Consulting on behalf of San Francisco Unified School District in support.
Pam Bichila on behalf of the Oakland Unified School District in the Alameda County Office of Education in support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions from members? Mr. Norby.
I have 3 grade school kids at home. I've got one at USC and another one on the way. Not to USC, but to this world. So the issue of how kids get along, how they don't get along, is something that affects my daily life, as I'm sure it has all of us as parents and as kids. And as a teacher at school for 18 years, I saw this as well. So certainly we want proper behavior among kids. My concern about the issue of bullying, though, has to do with how it's defined and how laws like this would apply to social networks, and I imagine future laws would apply to blogs and emails, and as the network expands, you just keep passing more and more laws trying to regulate personal behavior. But the definitions are what concern me, and I'm concerned about the long arm of the law getting involved in normal human relations, which sometimes can be difficult, especially on the playground, but don't necessarily require a state law. And maybe the author can respond a little bit to this. It's not a specific question, but a concern I have about the subject in general. This is off the website of the California State Department of Education, and it says that bullying is a form of violence which includes verbal, teasing, threatening, name-calling, psychological, excluding someone, spreading rumors, intimidating. Now, I presume the anti-bullying efforts only apply to kids under 18, so spreading rumors would not apply to legislators or reporters or people like that, because in all seriousness, one person's rumor is another person's inside information, which is essential. Excluding someone, yeah, my daughter has a birthday party. She invites 5 or 6 people and says, well, I don't want to invite Julie because I've had a fight with her. Is that bullying? Is that just a normal course that you do and you have to invite a limited number of people? Teasing, threatening, name-calling, I don't know what guys are going to do in the locker room anymore if that's prohibited. And I don't mean to make light of serious bullying, because serious bullying is a problem and I think is already covered by existing law. But the broadened definition and the slippery slope is what I'm concerned about. I don't know if the author wants to respond to that or not, but that's my concern in these types of bills.
I appreciate your question and your concern. This current bill that I am bringing forward is confined to the Ed Code, and we do not change I'm not asking to change the current code that you just stated. So I hope that is answering your question to the best of my ability.
Yes, Mr. Normey, I think it's clear that bullying is defined in the Ed Code. That can be a subject of another conversation, but for these purposes, the author is not trying to make that definition. Yes, Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for putting this bill forward, Ms. Campos. I think this is the time. I think we are reaching critical mass. I think the problem has been not necessarily in the definition, but not keeping up with the times, the electronic times. And as we know from the latest studies, that there have been larger incidences of emotional problems with kids because of social networking issues. I'd like to be added as a co-author as the bill moves forward, and thank you for bringing the bill up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ng. And now that we do have a quorum, I think we need to call it so we can make a motion on your bill. So if the Secretary would call the roll.
Brownlee.
Here.
Brownlee here. Norby. Norby here. Amiano.
Here.
Buchanan. Buchanan here. Butler. Carter. Carter here. Ng. Ng here. Gurrell. Halderman.
Here.
Halderman here. Wagner. Wagner here. Williams.
Okay, we do have a quorum, and Mr. Ng has moved the bill. Ms. Buchanan, it sounded like you had a position on the bill. Would you like to second the bill? Okay. Ms. Carter? Oh, okay. The bill has been moved by Mr. Ng in several seconds. Seeing no other questions, if you'd like to make a brief close.
I would respectfully ask an aye vote on this bill, please.
Thank you, and the motion is do pass. And with that, we will call for the vote on AB 746.
Brownlee.
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby. Norby not voting. Amiano. Buchanan. Buchanan, aye. Butler. Carter. Carter, aye. Ng. Ng, aye. Gurrell. Halderman. Halderman not voting. Wagner.
No.
Wagner, no. Williams. Okay, it has 4 votes.
Your bill has 4 votes that will remain on call.
Thank you.
All of our members aren't here yet, so there will be additional members who will cast a vote. Thank you very much. And we will move on to our next bill by Mr. Fuentes, item 1 and item 5. He has 2 bills with us today. The first one being AB 5, item 1. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it's okay with the Chair, I'd like to present first on AB 124. I think it's the easier of the 2 bills, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
At your pleasure. So AB 124 is item 5.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, first, let me say that I'm happy to accept the technical amendments detailed in the committee's analysis. There are 1.5 million English language learner pupils in our public schools, which represents 25% of our total school population here in California. Of these pupils, 1.2 million speak Spanish and 69% are enrolled in grades K through 6. It's crucial for these pupils to have access to a comprehensive English language arts curriculum in order to achieve linguistically, academically, and ultimately professionally. In August of 2010, the State Board of Education adopted the National Common Core Standards in English Language Arts. However, it did not adopt all of the necessary documents associated with instructing ELL pupils in these revised standards. While I think that it's critical that all Americans speak multiple languages as our world continues to shrink, English is still the language of commerce worldwide. It's critical for our children to succeed as adults and begin to learn English at a young age. This bill helps accomplish this goal. Since 1999, school districts have used the English Language Development ELD standards in conjunction with the ELA academic standards to instruct ELL pupils in acquiring English. The ELD standards are designed to specify the English literacy skills ELL pupils need to become proficient in the academic content standards. The standards are also the basis of the California English Language Development Tests, otherwise known as CELT, which measures pupils' English proficiency. This bill establishes an advisory committee identical to the process of revising the current academic content standards. The advisory committee is charged with updating, revising, and aligning the ELD standards to the newly adopted Common Core English Language Arts academic content standards. This bill is essential to ensuring that our ELL pupils develop the necessary skills to become proficient in English and academic subjects. This bill is sponsored by the Association of California School Administrators, the Californians Together Coalition, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the California Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages, and many others, and I ask for your support on this bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Witnesses in support.
Martha Zaragoza Diaz, representing Californians Together. I have with me Ms. Sylvia Reyes, who is an associate professor at San Diego State University and also the language arts coordinator at the San Diego County Office of Education. She is the author of the California Language Arts Content Standards Side by Side, a document that correlates and aligns the ELD standards and the ELA development standards by grade levels and level acquisition. Her area of expertise is language acquisition with a focus on academic writing. So Ms. Reyes will speak to the bill.
Thank you. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You have the opportunity today to vote yes.
Make sure and speak into your microphone.
Okay.
There you go.
You have the opportunity today to vote yes on one of the most important pieces of legislation impacting students who need to learn English. Why is this so timely and important? Well, last year, the Board of Education adopted the California Common Core Standards for English and Mathematics. Well, now we need to revise the ELD standards so that they are aligned and correlate with the new California Common Core Standards. The revised standards are needed because the ELD standards are the benchmarks that teachers use to make sure that the students are on their way to attaining the California Common Core. So these have to be aligned and correlated. It is the way that it is how we use, is how we measure the progress towards the English Language Arts standards. So it's very important that teachers have this tool to use. Not only that, it's not only just English and mathematics, it's also science and the rest of the subject matters. It is important to be able to monitor the progress of the English learners, and that's going to ensure accountability of the system, equity and access and opportunity to learn for the English learners. The revised ELD standards are essential. We must do this work. We are eager to do this work. We're willing. We have the capacity to do the work. So all we need is your approval, your yes vote, and we will get the job done.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Irving, and I'm Director of Curriculum Instruction for San Jose Unified, and here to speak in support of the bill in addition to speaking in support on behalf of ACSA, the Association of California School Administrators. As my colleagues said, approximately 25% of all students in California schools right now are English language learners. The need, as stated before, is essential in terms of helping support teachers in maintaining the most rigorous, effective classrooms we have with all students. In order to do that, teachers need support in terms of language acquisition, stages of language acquisition, as well as professional development and assessment related to our English language learners. It's important to all of us that we continue to maintain the quality that we have achieved by virtue of the common ELD standards as we transition to the national core common standards.
Thank you very much. It looks like there are a lot of people here to testify, or all of you lined up to testify. So I think if we could pull this microphone down on the corner of the dais and you could come up and speak, I think it will make things move a little smoother and more quickly. I'm sorry, we have one more witness here at the table, so please proceed.
I'm Maria Quesada from the California Association for Bilingual Education, and we're in support of the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Madam Chair, members, Jeff Frost, representing the California Association of Latino Superintendents, very strongly supporting, and also CATISOL, as Mr. Fuentes has mentioned. We're proud to support the bill and sponsor the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Monique Ramos, representing State Superintendent Torlakson. We're one of the sponsors of the bill, and we're in support.
Thank you.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Immigrant Policy Center in support of the bill, and also on behalf of my mom, who spent her entire life working with English learners in support of the bill.
Thanks,
San Jose
Mom.
Unified.
Thank you, Mom. Next witness.
Thank you. Liz Guillen with Public Advocates in strong support.
Thank you.
Riverside County School Superintendents in strong support.
Erica Hoffman on behalf of the California School Boards Association, also in support of the measure.
Isabel Garcia on behalf of the California Teachers Association in strong support.
Edgar Sazueta, Los Angeles Unified School District in support.
Joseph Villela on behalf of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, also in support.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Vandal, California State PTA, representing nearly 1 million parents in support. We do encourage the Department of Education to include a parent on the advisory committee. We feel that parents would add a lot of value to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barrett Snyder on behalf of the School Employers Association of California in support.
Thank you.
Andrew Keller on behalf of San Francisco Unified School District, also in support.
Thank you.
Pam Bachilla, Alameda County Office of Education, in support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions?
Move the
Mr.
bill.
Amiano.
Move the
Mr.
bill.
Amiano moves the bill. Is there a second on the bill? Ms. Carter, is this second? And you have a question, please.
Mr. Fuentes, this is really a great bill, and it's an advisory committee, so is it a voluntary committee, or will they be paid?
I'm sorry, did you say is it a voluntary committee or would it be compensated?
Paid. Compensated.
There's a travel per diem. Yeah, it's consistent with, I think, the other committees that have been established like this to deal with Common Core issues.
Great.
There are no pensions, Mr. Amiano.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you. I obviously support the bill. I do think Ms. Vandal brought up a good point on whether or not a parent should be represented on the committee, but I have a more general comment to make. It's too bad we need a bill for this, because it seems to me that any time we're developing standards in any subject area, part of that development process should consider English language learners and special needs students. And somehow we keep coming back to this. We know the Common Core standards don't, but this addresses it for English language arts, whether it's math, social studies, whatever. Whenever we're developing a curriculum, that should just be automatically part of the process. So, I mean, you may not want to amend your bill going forward, but I do think that we shouldn't have to do this. It just should become part of the normal
I'd be
process.
happy to co-author a bill that sort of went on that endeavor going forward.
I'd be happy to work
Absolutely.
with you on that. Thank you.
With the chair's permission, of course.
We're not going to hear that bill today, however. Okay, great. Yes, Mr. Wagner.
Briefly, thank you, Madam Chair. And the one concern I suppose I would have with this bill is it seems to me that with the provision in here, as I understand it, that the committee members can be removed by the superintendent, that we are somewhat shifting the balance of power here away from the State Board of Education and concentrating it in the hands of one person. And I just question the wisdom of that, and I suppose would like the author to address whether that concern is in fact why we would want to go in that direction. And I guess the second thing is with the creation of any new board, especially in these tight budget times, they sometimes tend to take on a life of their own. Would it be possible at some point, once we get farther along in the process, to maybe sunset the existence of this board, should in fact we decide to go and implement it?
Sure, and I think to Ms. Buchanan's point earlier, if there was sort of either other legislation in the future or this advisory committee has realized all of its work, then I'd be happy to talk about a sunset at some point. But to go to the first part of your question, we are just trying to be consistent with existing law, which is why the character and the makeup of the committee, we essentially copied existing law.
Why? Well, does it not seem to move away from the Board of Education's control and concentrate, given the termination provisions, in the hands of the superintendent?
I'm going to let my witness, who's far more, I think, versed on this stuff, but my understanding is that it's approved by the board, so it's not as if we're ceding any control there.
Mr. Fuentes, I think your office had indicated that you were accepting an amendment that addresses this particular issue, which serves so that the members would serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority and not the superintendent of public instruction.
You have agreed to that amendment? Oh, Madam Chairman, that does solve at least that problem. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mr. Norby.
Help me with this. I'd like to vote for it, and I probably will, but I do have a general impression that public education, both as a parent and as a classroom teacher of 18 years, is constantly engaged in the reinvention of the wheel and constantly engaged in changing standards, reinventing standards. ESL, LEP, ELL, there's so many. I remember going as a teacher to in-services just to relearn the jargon, and in the end it didn't really matter in the classroom. All that mattered is how old the kid was. The younger the kids are, the quicker they learn English, and the older they are, the harder it is for them to do it. And so is this another reinvention of the wheel? Is this something substantive? Is this something? Give me your best shot in one sentence, if you can.
It's us demonstrating that we want to conform with the sort of changing federal obligations that we've got to meet. And so this is an area that wasn't spoken to by the federal government, and so we're just trying to make sure that we get kept up.
So they're kind of reinventing the wheel again.
Well, they're changing things, and we're just trying to keep pace.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? I just want to say what others have already said. This is a very important bill. Certainly, the alignment with Common Core standards and the integration of that is critically important. And I'm trying to work. I have a bill working on Common Core standards, so I see this one very much aligned with what I'm trying to do, and would very much like to join you and be a co-author if you would accept that. And I think we do have a motion by Mr. Amiano and seconded by Ms. Carter. If you have any closing remarks.
Would be happy to add you, Madam Chair, as a co-author, and just simply ask on behalf of myself and Mr. Hernandez's mother an aye vote for this.
Thank you. And this is due pass as amended to the Appropriations Committee. And with that, I will ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
Aye.
Norby, aye. Amiano? Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Ing, aye. Gurrell? Halderman? Halderman, aye. Wagner?
I'm sorry. Can I correct that?
I'm sorry.
I said no.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Halderman. Halderman, no. Wagner? Wagner, aye. Williams? Williams, aye. Okay, it has 9-1.
So that's 9 votes. That bill is out. And if you will proceed to item 1, AB 5.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Before I begin with my statement here on AB 5, I wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, and your staff for your support and cooperation in the stakeholder process. And that's also to say that I'm very grateful for all of the witnesses that are going to present on this bill, both for and against and in concern of the bill. This is a bill that's taken a significant amount of time to sort of get to this point, and so I absolutely appreciate, again, the support and your willingness to participate in that stakeholder process. So thank you for that, Madam Chair. Members, research consistently identifies the quality of a teacher as the single most important factor in improving student achievement. However, for the most part, here in California, we lack a consistent or comprehensive system to measure the quality of teaching in our public schools. For over a year, the state and the nation has engaged in a conversation regarding teacher effectiveness. The media has framed this conversation, unfortunately, as a discussion between good and bad teachers, and how do school districts get rid of the really bad teachers. I don't agree with the fundamental premise of this characterization. In fact, I believe that we must pivot and change the conversation to be more about supporting all teachers in their ability to be effective, regardless if they are new or a veteran teacher. But we also need to create a rigorous, data-driven system that utilizes data to inform effective instructional practices in the classroom. This is a contentious issue nationwide. On one extreme, we have seen most recently characterized in the media that the state of Florida recently made their teacher evaluation system rely almost entirely on student test scores. In addition to that, they added merit pay to sort of that system. On the other extreme, there are those that defend the current teacher evaluation system, the Stoll Act, and who don't believe that changes are necessary to this system. I believe that there must be a middle ground which acknowledges the value that comes with a teacher having experience while also ensuring that those that are empowered with the awesome responsibility of educating our youth are held accountable in a fair manner to the strongest possible assessment. This bill, I believe, is a first step in forging that compromise. For almost 1 year, I have met regularly with education organizations representing teachers, school districts, administrators, school boards, parents, community members, and as I mentioned in my opening, legislative staff. In these meetings, we have discussed the importance of a comprehensive teacher evaluation tool and how this tool can be used to support teachers in their instructional practices. Let me underscore that the aim of that is to support teachers in their educational and instructional practices. Quality instruction in the classroom leads to higher achievement by pupils. This bill details the foundation for a comprehensive teacher evaluation system and establishes a mechanism for the continuous improvement of teachers. Specifically, the bill requires school districts to include all of the following components in teacher evaluations. First, evidence of effectiveness as compared to the California standards for the teaching profession. Second, evidence of effectiveness in teaching the California academic content standards, the Common Core standards, and the California English Language Development Standards as measured by more than 1 year of summative and formative assessment data. And lastly, multiple observations of teacher instruction conducted by the trained administrators and peers. Consistent with current law under the Stoll Act, school districts must collectively bargain their teacher evaluation process with their union. The difference in this bill is that all components identified in this measure must be a part of the teacher evaluation. This bill also requires permanent teachers who perform in an unsatisfactory manner as defined by the school district via the collective bargaining agreement to participate for 1 year in an instructional support program as specified. California continues to struggle with a persistent achievement gap for our poor, minority students, English language learners, and pupils with special needs. Nearly half of the children who start high school aren't finishing. In districts like mine, for example, the information that I've received from the University of California indicates that over 65% of the students that start in my district area don't complete high school. For me, and I hope for the rest of us, that's simply unacceptable. One of the necessary steps in narrowing this gap is ensuring that all pupils consistently receive quality instruction in the classroom. This bill is not designed to punish teachers. Instead, it establishes a system to evaluate all teachers in a fair and transparent manner with the purpose of providing continuous improvement with a lot of recognition for local deference to its governance structures at the school level and to the collective bargaining agreements that are at the local level. I am happy to accept the 2 amendments proposed by the committee. The first is to ensure that probationary teachers receive feedback after being observed, and the second is a technical amendment to insert a word to ensure the bill reads correctly. Several members of the working group are here to offer comments on both the bill and the process. Likewise, Dr. Mark Jackson, Superintendent of Silver Valley Unified School District, located in San Bernardino County, is here to answer questions on the teacher evaluation process.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support of the bill.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. Those of us that were here last year will recall that last year's policy conversation gave a lot of space to the equal rights of students to be protected from the harm of being assigned an ineffective teacher. And that conversation was very dissatisfying for many of us because it assumed two things that are not true. One is that all teachers were fully prepared to be in the classroom in the first place, and secondly, that our evaluation system was actually working in a way that served both teachers and students. Because of this contentious issue, we think it's really courageous of Assemblymember Fuentes to bring this bill forward and to focus just on the evaluation piece. We think that right now in its current form, there isn't anything we don't like about it. We know that it's going to be improved, and because of that, we wanted to give our support early. We think that the issues around student and parent participation need to be fleshed out, and we are confident that the author is going to address those. And we also think that the California standards for the teaching profession need to be clarified, and hopefully will be objective standards that all districts will take on and include, especially as they work with parents and students, so that they too understand what those standards are, because we feel they are strong, but so few people understand or know about them. Thank you. I'm proud today to be joined by advocates for student organizations who will testify as well.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Katie Van Ginkel, and I am the Governmental Affairs Director for the California Association of Student Councils. CASC is a nonprofit, student-run and led organization that trains ASBs, represents the student voice in California, and has been deeply involved in teacher evaluation. As a senior in high school, I feel it's important that I deliver the student perspective on AB 5. The bill states that permanent employees who are deemed to be performing at an unsatisfactory level shall participate for 1 year in an instructional program to improve employee performance. The bill also states the governing board of a school district shall define the term performing in an unsatisfactory manner. Although I do support district governance, I feel that allowing districts to completely define unsatisfactory would be counterproductive. Without any basic outline of unsatisfactory performance, teachers could be held to entirely different standards. This would really negate the intentions of the bill. If we are to hold teachers to the same evaluative standards, then we must also hold them to similar measurements of performance. As basic and obvious as this provision may seem, I feel it's necessary to be detailed in defining this bill. I commend Assemblymember Fuentes for his leadership and proactive spirit in finding the compromise for this growing and controversial issue. On behalf of myself, CASC, and the students of California, I wholeheartedly support this bill so long as students are included in the process. As the greatest stakeholders in education, it's vital that students are included in the evaluation of teachers. I would suggest that these be executed through student-teacher surveys, which have proved incredibly effective in several districts across California. Being heavily involved in the passing of SB 1422, which gives ASBs authority to work with teachers to create a comprehensive evaluative survey, I've been able to speak with Bonnie Reese, Paul Navarro, Yoli Flores, and several other individuals with great stakes in our education system. On a grassroots level, the voices of students are continually muddled. Having no state oversight, I believe it's imperative to include students and parents in the process to help hold districts accountable. I see the direction in which AB 5 is headed, and it excites me to see a strong group of individuals stepping up to help solve this growing issue. This bill is the supreme foundation for a comprehensive bill that would tackle this problem with great compromise. On behalf of myself and CASC, I strongly urge you to support AB 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we have about 1 more minute left in terms of testimony, so please proceed.
So my name is Sergio Cuellar with California for Justice and also the Campaign for Quality Education. I wholeheartedly agree with Katie's statements here, but also want to make sure that we're also looking at parental and student involvement in the process to make sure that we not only look at student achievement, but also the classroom environment and also how we're engaging our students and parents in their own education. So with that, I will go ahead and...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Jackson. I'm the superintendent of the Silver Valley Unified School District, and I'm also here representing the Association of California School Administrators. And what I would like to say is that teachers are our best research, but they also need to be evaluated and evaluated fairly. I think that we're not into teacher bashing with this legislation. I think we're here to improve the teaching process. And I believe it's healthy at this point to redo this so that we can give the support that we need to our administrators in the field and approach evaluation in a fair and consistent manner.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here with us today. Next witness. Yes.
Good afternoon. Edgar Sasueta on behalf of Los Angeles Unified. Oh, did I?
It's okay. You go ahead. You already started, so go ahead.
I apologize. Edgar Sasueta on behalf of Los Angeles Unified School District. We thank the author. We thank the chairwoman and her staff for the process in getting here. We have a support with amendments, but we continue to work with the committee and the author on our issues. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Lee with PICO, California. We are a statewide organization, grassroots organization representing more than 450,000 families in California. Although we have not taken a position on AB 5 yet, we understand and appreciate the importance of this bill. We feel strongly that parents and students should have a role in both the development of a teacher evaluation system and that their input should be one of the multiple measures used as part of a comprehensive evaluation system, and we look forward to working with the author and his staff on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for witnesses in support of the bill.
Laura Preston, Association of California School Administrators, we're in support.
Madam Chair, I have no position. May I make a couple of comments as a stakeholder?
We're leaning towards somewhere.
Thanks. I'll be very quick.
Very quick.
Brian Rivas, on behalf of the California School Boards Association. We've been participating in stakeholder meetings with the Assembly member and staff. We like the framework. We think it would improve the evaluation system and give teachers and districts better information so teachers can identify areas for self-improvement and help districts distinguish among teachers to identify who needs help. Our concerns relate to costs, and the Assembly member has acknowledged that. We're trying to find a way to work around that, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses who want to express something positive that might have an issue that they want to raise.
That would be me. Sandy Silverstein, representing Riverside County School Superintendents Association. We don't have a position yet. We're part of the stakeholder group working on this. Our message to you is please move this bill forward today so we can continue to try to find that middle ground. We think we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Barrett Snyder on behalf of the School Employers Association of California. In the good feelings towards the bill realm, we support the bill, want it to move forward.
Got it.
Erin Gable on behalf of State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlickson. He also does not yet have a formal position on the bill, but would like to thank the author for his leadership on this very critical issue, and would like to see that we continue to have this discussion in the comprehensive context of teacher support, preparation, and evaluation centered around high-quality teaching standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Walrath, representing Small School District Associations. We also do not have a position on the bill yet, but we have talked to the author's staff. Our concern is when you have a school district that is one school, superintendent principal, who is the same person, who knows most of the teachers in the school, that this is a significant increase, and we're looking at how we might be able to have a not one-size-fits-all in the bill, though we concur on the importance of the evaluation system.
Thank you. Next witness.
Patricia Rucker, California Teachers Association. CTA also does not have a position on the bill at this time. The conversations that we have had at this point have really focused on surfacing what are some of the common challenges in the current evaluation system. It is clearly a system that many teachers do not feel they can trust, that rarely offers clear direction for improving practice, and it often charges school leaders to implement without preparation or resources. Our concerns with the bill remain. Even if it's replacing the current stall system, we don't believe the bill as it currently is formed will fully address in a comprehensive way those particular issues. It still does not require evidence, as been pointed out, about what is systemic effectiveness. It doesn't require any evaluation of administrator effectiveness or identify what are the hallmarks of effective training to prepare administrators to do the evaluation well. It does not improve interpretation or practice on how we apply or use assessments in the evaluation of teachers. By assuming that the scope of poor teaching is the sole focus of the bill, our concern remains, is the bill truly focusing on teaching and learning, or is it still focusing on the worst outcomes of an assessment or evaluation system? Good evaluation should provide particular data that leads to improvement. If we're not clear on what those particular practices or functions are, and we're giving training to administrators to prepare that, we haven't solved the problems that are the gaps that have been identified in the stall. Finally, while the STAR assessment system is being included in the bill along with other types of formative assessment, the STAR was never intended to be used in this way. So are you creating more problems than you resolve by continuing to insist on using an assessment system that even the publisher says is not intended to be used in this particular way? We will continue having the conversation with Mr. Fuentes. These are not new questions or issues that we've raised, and we'll continue to do work to look at ways to improve what the intent or purpose should be, but we do believe that there still is a broader, more comprehensive conversation about evaluation that this bill still does not address.
Thank you. Next witness. And I don't know what next witness. This is still support or saying something positive with. Okay, so this is opposition. Okay, great. Any other witnesses in support? Or somewhere in between? We're now transitioning to witnesses in opposition.
I'm Greg Solkovitz. I'm here on behalf of both United Teachers Los Angeles and the California Federation of Teachers. I'm the secondary vice president for UTLA and have been very heavily engaged in things evaluation, working with the district, and I'm also the co-chair of the Educational Issues Committee for the California Federation of Teachers. We're here. We enjoy a good working relationship with Mr. Fuentes. We continue to want to have a dialogue because evaluation is a concern for everybody. Teachers are very concerned about developing a world-class evaluation system, which we don't have here in the state of California. But we're concerned, A, about the reliance on standardized testing as a state mandate. It says it respects collective bargaining, yet it mandates testing. We're seeing what happened in Washington, D.C., right now as a result of mandated use of standardized testing, especially tests that were never created for this purpose. We don't think that's the way to go about doing a robust evaluation. We're concerned about the cost involved. If you really want to do a robust, worthwhile evaluation process, there are costs attached to this, and obviously the state's in not a particularly good condition to give extra money to provide for evaluation. We're also bothered at the lack of an administrative component because quite clearly we need an evaluation system that administrators are trained properly in so they know how to improve teachers, because ultimately that should be the goal. And that's another concern of ours, that nowhere in the bill does it explicitly state that the goal of the state of California is an evaluation system to improve the craft of teaching so that they better serve students and schools. And that would be a very helpful change to the bill as well. Last but not least, we understand the environment that we live in. We understand the environment we're in, but we think that there needs to be a stronger emphasis on the idea that we're going to improve teaching, working with teachers, working with administrators, working with students, working with parents, and avoid the reliance, the easy sort of default reliance on standardized tests, which drive the system in a whole different direction that I personally, as a 28-year teacher of at-risk students, don't want to see schools being driven in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As he did speak for California Federation of Teachers, just wanted to emphasize that we do have these concerns. We are opposed unless amended, and we wanted to be honest with all stakeholders where we are up front as opposed to having an opposition later down the road. So we are working with the author. We like the direction he's going. We do agree with many of the things that he has stated, and that's our position.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from members? Ms. Buchanan, the bill has been moved by Dr. Halderman, and is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Norby. Ms. Buchanan.
Yeah, I can't support the bill because based on my 18 years as a school board member, I just don't think it, for me, I don't think it does anything truly to improve the system. In fact, I think in some ways it may create more problems. You know, I appreciate the way you opened up talking about the need to have highly effective teachers, because the research shows that having a highly effective teacher is key to student performance, whether you want to improve performance in a high-performing district or a struggling district. Having that high-performing teacher is absolutely critical, and I'm glad you defined it as effective teacher versus highly qualified, which we've had with No Child Left Behind, because we know that that's been a failure, and having more pieces of paper doesn't make you an effective teacher. But I think ultimately if you want effective teachers, you have to have adequate compensation, you have to provide training and in-service, and you have to have a meaningful evaluation system. And when you look at standardized tests like these, and you look at people who spend their careers developing tests, when you talk to people from the testing companies, they all tell you that these tests were never intended to be used for evaluation, that they are not meaningful, that that is a misuse of a test, and that's not how they are supposed to be utilized. And I don't see how taking a snapshot of how students perform one day of the year, when some of those subcategories have as few as 4 or 5 questions, and you're going to base a teacher's performance and evaluation and whether they continue at that school makes any sense. I believe in parent and student involvement, but I have 5 children. My 2 youngest are twins, boy and a girl. I can remember when they both were in the same history class, and one of them to this date believes that teacher is the best teacher he ever had in his 13 years of school, and the twin sister couldn't stand the class. So is the teacher a great teacher, or is the teacher a mediocre teacher? I mean, that happens from one student to the next. I take a look at classes that have fully included students. Their test scores aren't going to be the same as those that don't. Is that teacher a good teacher or not a good teacher? Clearly that teacher is willing to take on additional time and tasks and everything to have students with special needs in the class, but the test scores are not going to be the same. I take a look at subjects like algebra. When we want to measure whether or not you're highly effective by standardized test scores increases, how do you make more than 1 year's progress in algebra or geometry or some of these other subjects? I worry very much, and this was expressed to me by parents in our school district. We had an education day yesterday, and their question is, if we start doing more evaluating, if we start evaluating teachers on student test scores, which to a certain extent we do with schools already, does that mean we're going to have even more teaching to the test, continued narrowing in the curriculum, and instruction that ultimately doesn't produce the kind of well-rounded students we want? I truly believe if you want to change education, we need to stop blaming teachers. When I sat at the table for 18 years in our school district, I never had the contract get in the way of anything we wanted to do. We revised our evaluation system. It's based on the California standards for the teaching profession. We did that at the negotiations table. Our district, our administrators were committed to data-driven decision and using that data to improve instruction, to drive in-service and training decisions. And I watched student test scores go up year after year. But that was based on a system of cooperation where we valued all the teachers and what they did, and not one where we're trying to blame and put labels on someone's a bad teacher, someone's a good teacher, someone's a highly effective teacher. I truly believe if you want to change the system, we need to provide more time and training for not just teachers, but for administrators. We need to have adequate compensation. We need to have time in the school day for in-service and training and to share best practices. And we need to have meaningful evaluation systems that go far beyond the STAR tests, that get into formative assessments that we're looking at throughout the year that give teachers the information to help Johnny, not after he's not done well on a standardized test in April or May, but help him throughout the year. And, what I would recommend that you do is make this a pilot program, if you want to, for Ella Unified, but not impose this on every single school district in the state, especially those schools where their systems are already working.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I want to start by saying, frankly, I echo a number of the concerns that we just heard expressed by Ms. Buchanan, and would like to point out a couple of additional concerns that I've got with this bill. And some of them were touched on, indeed, in fact, by the AFT and also by some of the CTA folks. Frankly, where to begin? I guess I am concerned that the bill requires that discipline procedures and the review procedures, be by mutual agreement with the exclusive bargaining representative. Having come from education board myself, I know how difficult it is sometimes to get mutual agreement with the bargaining units, so much so that in one case we ended up in litigation that sapped resources and was extraordinarily counterproductive. And that was just by the mutual agreement language. If the bargaining unit doesn't want to agree, it doesn't have to agree, and we find ourselves at a standstill. And there is some incentive for the bargaining units not to agree. The bottom line is that the unions are, in fact, if not in law, required to represent the interests of all of their members, including some of those who may be less effective and may be lower performing, rather than focus exclusively on the pedagogy. That is the nature and indeed the legal charge of the unions that we just have to face as a reality. I am also concerned a little bit about the provision in here that you will go to a year's worth of evaluation if, given all the subjectivity that Ms. Buchanan talks about, at the end of that process someone is found to be less than effective. That's going to drive up the cost. There's nothing in this bill that says what are the consequences to a low-performing teacher who is forced into this re-education process. Must that process also be mutually agreed upon between the boards and the unions? That's left unsaid. And as one of the witnesses said, in this current budget environment, I am very much resistant to loading yet another potential mandate onto the K-12 folks. I think this is, as we heard again from witnesses, in a state of negotiation, perhaps a state of flux. I don't think it's ready now. I don't think I can support it right now. For these reasons, perhaps all of the stakeholders and the author will be able to work things out in the coming months, and we can take this up at a later date. But those are my concerns. If you'd like to address any of them, you're free to, but that's kind of where I am, and I throw that out there for you.
Sure. And, I'm happy to, if it's okay with the chair, sort of hear the concerns and maybe in my close, just for time, sort of address them. But I'm taking notes here.
That suits me well. Mr. Norby.
Teachers want effective evaluations, and the current system by which teachers are told, okay, you're going to be evaluated at this particular time, the vice principal or the principal or somebody's going to come in and watch you. I've been through that every year I was teaching. You know when they're coming in. You're on your best behavior, which is fine. And so they see you when hopefully you're at your best. The feedback you get is fairly minimal. And it's almost like a lot of people I hear that take the citizenship test. They study and study and study, and then it's easier than they thought. And they want something back to help you be a better teacher, and they're not getting it currently. And so I think this is a step in the right direction. The best should never be the enemy of the better. This isn't the best, but I think it is an improvement. And certainly relative to your placement in standardized test scores has to be an element of this. To say this results in teaching to the test, well, yes, coaches coach for the game, teachers teach for the test. It's kind of a negative cliche, but anyone who's ever taught knows the kids are always asking, is this going to be on the test? Is this going to be on the test? And you always tell them yes, because if you tell them no, then they're not taking notes and not paying attention. And if it's a good test, then that's okay. I think what we don't want are so many standardized tests that the kids know aren't going to affect their grade, because when they get these standardized tests and say, is this going to affect our grade, you can't tell them yes because they know better, and you give them other inducements to try to do better so they'll look better and the school will look better. Parents want this. Students want this as well. Now, students are already way ahead of us. You can go online right now, speaking of cyberbullying, this may be a form of it, and you will get very, very brutal and direct evaluations of tens of thousands of teachers all over the state. Just go on ratemyteacher.com. I've done it with my kids' high school. And every single teacher in that school has hundreds and hundreds of evaluations, some quite direct. I'm glad they don't identify themselves because they might be covered by cyberbullying, but they do provide information for parents and for kids to know who the effective and the ineffective teachers are. So I think we have to be a part of that and not simply ignore it. I think this is a step in the right direction. It's not the final step, but I'm willing to take it and vote for it.
Thank you, Mr. Normie. Mr. Amiano.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to be evaluated on Yelp. I think we need a little more structure than that, and I'm sure the legislators feel the same way. If you get evaluated on Yelp, doesn't feel particularly good because you're only looking at one opinion or perhaps sometimes an orchestrated opinion. Back to the topic. I think Ms. Buchanan really expressed very eloquently how I feel, particularly because I taught. And teachers need to be evaluated on at different levels. An elementary teacher should not get the same kind of assessment or the broad stroke of, say, of a high school teacher. I've always known teachers to really be hungry for mentoring, for evaluation, for assessment. And so I'm going to take a leap of faith here. I appreciate your trajectory and your sincerity. You are on very thin ice, but perhaps Mr. Fuentes, with his silver skates, will come up with a magical and comprehensive solution. I'm prepared to give you, and I don't mean to sound patronizing, I'm prepared to make a courtesy vote, giving you the benefit, but I can't promise on the floor what will happen. It seems to me that there is some nascent collaboration already happening. People feel positive. That's always a good feeling. So,
thank you, Mr. Williams.
Well, of all the online evaluation tools, I think SendLove would be more your style, Mr. Amiano. But I think I am with Mr. Amiano on this. I have some of the same concern as Ms. Buchanan, but I think that having the provision of having by mutual agreement of a collective bargaining arrangement is exactly the precaution that we need. I think Mr. Wagner convinced me to support the bill. Your objection is exactly the converse of Ms. Buchanan's, and so I think I'm prepared to give you a vote here today, but I'd love to see how this is developed for the floor.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I would just like to say I appreciate all of the time and effort and the collaborative effort you've put into this so far, because I think now it's probably, 7 or 8 months worth of work at least on this, and I know you want to continue that work. And I think some of the comments Ms. Buchanan made are the things that we are all worried about, and want to make sure that as this bill moves forward, that we continue to have a structure and a bill that is supportive of teachers, that's not focused on one data point relative to the evaluation. I mean, I think clearly the way the bill is written right now, a district could negotiate an evaluation process that gives STAR a weight of 1%. That could be the end result. So we're not talking about one data point. I think hopefully all districts will, in this process, will come up with other metrics and other locally developed tests that are informative and helps the teacher, helps inform his or her instruction in the classroom, and that this is a positive experience. And I think teachers want an evaluation system, but they want a fair one and an honorable one, and one in which we must invest into to make it one that is going to be a successful one, because professional development and all the other things costs money. It's just as simple as that. I don't believe that you're going in the direction of about a gotcha bill with teachers or trying to blame teachers. I'm quite convinced that that's not the direction that you're going in, and so I will be supporting this bill today, and I will take the privilege, if as you move forward with this bill, if it changes quite substantially, that I would ask for the bill to come back to be heard in the committee. So I will certainly hold that as my right to do so and reserve that right. And so with that, if you want to make your close.
I
this
do,
would be the
Madam
time.
Chair. Thank you for that. And by way of example, I feel that this evaluation by the committee has sort of given me the real-time data here to continue the work to proceed. I do want to remind the committee that we know that the federal government is currently discussing teacher evaluations as they're considering the reauthorization of the Elementary Secondary Education Act, ESEA. And previously, those issues were tied to the race to the top conversations, with the chair and her staff know all too well. If the feds are going to tie any of the teacher evaluation reform to the state receiving those ESEA dollars, or maybe even the Title I monies that California enjoys from the federal government, I would ask that we continue the conversation and at least use this bill as a forum to try to figure out what type of evaluative system we can put in place that would safeguard those monies for California. I really do believe, though, that California can't afford to wait to have other states sort of lead the way, as we saw in Florida. I happen to disagree with the legislation that was signed into law there. The process that we've started here has gone a long way, and again, I do want to add my thanks to all of you for the conversations that we've had and for the examples that you have given me to sort of go back and sharpen my pencil with. But I do want to point out that the nature of this bill really is intended to motivate professional development. And in order for us to sort of get to that place, I strongly believe that we have to land correctly on the evaluation components of professional development. And so I will understand the concerns that Assemblymember Buchanan has in terms of using data that would sort of bind folks for an indefinite amount of time on one sort of data point. But I do want to remind the committee that this bill is designed to use multiple measures. And to Assemblymember Williams' points, those multiple measures are to be negotiated at the local level, because I, for one, believe that there needs to be a lot of deference to the governance of the school districts to ascertain as to what measures should be enacted and what weight, more importantly, should be attributed to those measures. So I think that bill is working in that direction, and I absolutely agree that we need to be very careful as not to put too much weight in one category, which is why the bill, by design, is meant to leave that decision to the locals. The last thing I do want to address is the point that Mr. Wagner mentioned in terms of what are the consequences of, say, a failing evaluation. Well, the bill is silent on that right now because, again, I do believe that we need to land correctly on the evaluation component and then look at the following tranche of professional development. And then ultimately we will have to have the conversation about dismissal and how this data should or should not be used in the dismissal proceedings. As happy that we're working closely with the stakeholders that were in the room today, and they have indicated, various groups have indicated that they have stakeholder proceedings going now that actually are looking towards bifurcating sort of the different types of evaluative techniques, whether they're formative or summative. So I can't answer the question in terms of dismissal and what would happen with the use of this data. I think once we land on what the evaluative techniques are going to be, we can then talk about professional development. And as the bill moves forward, I'm happy to revisit this committee if the chair finds it that we need to do that. So with that, I do want to thank the members for their input and conversation. It's taken to heart, and we will be continuing our work on this measure, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. And you've accepted the committee amendments. The motion was made by Dr. Haldeman and seconded by Mr. Norby. It's due pass as amended to the Appropriations Committee. And with that, we'll have the Secretary call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
Aye.
Norby, aye. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Buchanan? No. Buchanan, no. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ng? Ng, aye. Gurel? Halderman? Aye. Halderman, aye. Wagner? No. Wagner, no. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye. 8.
It's 8 votes. Your bill is out.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members.
Thank you. So now we will move to Mr. Mendoza's bills. He has 2, AB 85 and AB 86. AB 85 is item number 3. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And please present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm here to present AB 85, a bill that will put safer locks in K-12 and community college classrooms. AB 85 is similar to AB 211, which was signed into law last year. AB 211 required new school construction projects to include classroom locks that lock from the inside. Similarly, AB 85 will require K-12 modernization projects to include classroom safety locks when the classroom is slotted for structural upgrades. Classrooms should have locks that can be locked from the inside in case of a violent incident near or on campus. Violent incidents on school campuses and neighborhoods surrounding school campuses are increasing at an alarming rate. Lockdowns are used by school campuses to facilitate the safety of students, teachers, and staff during a violent or potentially violent situation. Since 2009, there have been more than 20 violent incidents in the United States, including very recent incidents here at Gardena High School in LA. This is a matter of keeping our schools safe. Madam Chair and members, we are accepting the amendment suggested by the committee that safety locks be placed in a classroom when the classroom is slotted for modernization upgrades. With me today, I have Dolores Sanchez from the California Federation of Teachers to testify, and also Pat Egan, Chair of the California Federation of Teachers Safe and Nonviolent School Committee, who will be speaking on some of these incidents. Thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Dolores Sanchez, and I'm with the California Federation of Teachers. We are the sponsors of this bill, and this bill, as Mr. Mendoza said, is a follow-up bill to the CFT-sponsored AB 211. That was unanimously passed by this committee and progressed through the legislature with near unanimous support. AB 211 was, we believe, a significant step towards constructing new, safer schools, and we believe that AB 85 similarly represents the next step to creating safer existing schools. We believe that it was a good idea 2 years ago, and we believe this is a great idea now. We ask for your support, and with me today, I'm going to defer my time to Pat Egan. He's a longtime high school teacher, and he's the chair of the Safe and Nonviolent Schools Committee, where this bill emanated from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity for me to address you on this matter. I've been a public high school teacher for 27 years in Salinas, California. I teach at Alisal High School, which is on the east side, the inner city type of school. Alisal High School was built in 1965, and so it is not a new building, and in fact, there are no new high schools planned for that part of town. I might add that Salinas has a very serious gang problem. At a recent conference on public safety, the Salinas Chief of Police, Louis Featherall, admitted that at this point we are losing the war on gangs. At Alisal High School over the last 12 months, there has been 7 lockdowns, all called by the Salinas Police Department, none called by the administration of my high school. I might add that next to Alisal High School is a K-6 elementary school, and less than a half-mile away is another elementary school and a middle school. And for those 7 incidents, all of the schools were placed on lockdown under the authority of the Salinas Police Department. Why were they placed on lockdown? In one case, a student on school grounds crossing the athletics field before school was shot in broad daylight in front of 60 students. On another occasion, 2 students less than a block from the elementary school were executed in the street. Literally, their killers forced them to kneel down and shot them in the back of the head. On another case, a meth lab was raided that was across the street from the elementary school. As the raid happened, the people from the inside of that house eluded the police and escaped into the neighborhood. On other occasions, violent people on probation have been pulled over by the police, and when weapons were found, they have run, in one case, through the playground of the elementary school. Lockdowns are necessary to protect our children. I am not only a teacher, I have a son at the high school I teach at, and I have a granddaughter at the high school I teach at. I take my responsibilities as a teacher very seriously. I try to teach to the best of my abilities, and I am aware of the responsibilities I have as a classroom teacher to keep them safe. Like all of my colleagues, I accept my responsibilities willingly. I am willing to do whatever it takes to keep my children, your children, my grandchildren, and your grandchildren safe. What we are asking for in this bill is to extend the protections that you gave in 211 to the schools of the inner cities. New schools are not being built in the inner cities. Therefore, 211 really didn't address where the inner city and where the gang problems are. But these schools are coming up for modernization projects. And our hope is, if you pass AB 85, what we're asking for is that a lock such as this, that has a key on both sides, so that when it is necessary to protect our students, that the teacher can go and lock the door from the inside, thus reducing the risk to the teacher and more importantly, to our children and to our grandchildren. For this reason, we ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we have about a minute left in the 5-minute time frame, so please proceed.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the California Teachers Association, we are in support of this bill, 121 from last year, and before the committee reaches its deadline, you'll have a bill that will ask the safety committees to reassess who gets keys to the door. So for that, we ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Greg Solkovich, Second VP, UTLA, and UTLA also supports the bill.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Joshua Golko with the California School Employees Association, also in support.
Thank you.
Megan Brightwell on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, in support.
Thank you.
Michelle Castro, the Service Employees International Union, also in support.
Excellent. Next witness? No? Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Madam Chair and members, Brian Rivas on behalf of the California School Boards Association. With the committee recommended amendments, we are withdrawing our opposition and moving to a neutral position. I just want to thank your staff for her work on developing that, and thank Mr. Mendoza for listening to our concerns and addressing them.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patty Herrera with the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. We do appreciate the work of your staff and the amendment that Assemblymember Mendoza is taking. It goes a long way to address our concerns relative to the cost impact on modernization projects. I would be remiss, however, on behalf of the school districts that we represent, to not ask for an additional amendment to provide our state allocation board the authority to increase the new construction and modernization grants to pay for the state's share of the costs of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Eric Bacher with the Los Angeles Unified School District. We had an opposed position on the bill, and we appreciate the staff's attempt to make an amendment to address our cost concerns. We still, as the previous speaker mentioned, we believe that the bill does impose a cost upon the school districts. I think the appropriate funding source for that would be under the deferred maintenance program that already provides money for this as an eligible project. Challenge, though, right now in this time is that there is no funding for that. Modernization program is intended for large building component systems. This isn't one of them, but we believe the efforts taken last year under the new construction program were appropriate because, in fact, there is no cost to a school district. Under modernization, there would be a pseudo-mandate, so to speak, and I think the amendments taken in this bill are appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Hearing none.
Move the bill.
Bill has been moved. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Buchanan. Questions, comments? Mr. Norby.
Mr. Mendoza, I know you care about the safety of kids at school. I've met your kids. I went to a birthday party at your house a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciate you inviting us to that. And we had a wonderful time there in Artesia. And we have kids of similar age range, even though you and I are not of the same age range. I have two concerns about the bill, though, and you're certainly welcome to address them. Number one, there are, I think, about 1,000 separate school districts in the state, 1,000 separately elected school boards, and what a school may think is necessary in one city, they might not necessarily think is necessary in some other area of the state. And so we've heard from the school board, some are still opposed, some are no longer opposed, but don't necessarily support it. So I think they may be in a better position than us as a state to judge their security needs. The second concern has to do with the overall perception of crime. We're all concerned about crime. None of us wants to be a victim of it. But at the same time, exaggerating the fear of crime doesn't necessarily make us safer. And our fears should be based on something rational rather than just anecdotes or the latest report on Nancy Grace. I have in front of me the statistics, National Center of Education Statistics, and it shows that violent crime, serious crime, theft, all of these have gone down substantially, some by as much as 60% in public American schools in the last 10 years. Now, I know there are anecdotes. Different schools have different levels of crime. You have sensationalized shootings on TV. But for those, especially who work at schools, who represent teacher organizations, to feed into this, I think you do so at your peril, because you do so at the risk of risking public support for public schools and feeding into fears, especially for those that no longer have kids in public schools, that the schools are somehow much less safe than they were, because a lot of the same older people, and I talked to them a lot when I was a public school teacher, said, gee, I feel sorry for these days, all the gangs and all the shootings and all the stuff going on in schools. And of course, it really wasn't necessarily true. Those same people will talk about, oh, the things we used to do in school, you get arrested for now if you're a kid, or those were the good old days. So these perceptions sort of regale about this lawlessness at schools that was kind of fun way back when, at the same time how it's worse now. So I am concerned about that. Maybe I'd like to address it, because feeding off a general perception that schools are just increasingly becoming more dangerous just isn't backed up by factual data. And to the extent that it is, I think local school boards might be better to make those judgments. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to comment?
Now or close it, however you like. Well,
Pardon me?
I'll address it now if you like, Madam
Or
Chair.
address it when he closes, whatever you want, Madam Chair.
Addressing
Okay,
the close.
sure. Next time, Mr. Nambi, I'll make sure I let you hit the piñata a few extra times when you come over.
Ms. Buchanan.
Yeah, I pretty much represent a district that's mostly middle to upper middle class, and we've, in my immediate school district, and I know surrounding school districts, we put this into our building standards not because parents had fear of crime or we were or believed more, it was expanding or accelerating, but because you do have situations where even schools in middle-class communities sometimes go on lockdown for a variety of reasons. It could be a custodial issue between parents. It could be, maybe there's robbery, different reasons. And the problem of not being able to secure the classrooms from inside, locking the doors is a real problem. So my only question is this. I think the amendment there is intended to address AXA's concern that this would be required if you wanted to take a look at replacing an HVAC system's modernization versus what we would call complete modernization. And I don't know if you can answer this, if staff needs to answer it, when we narrow the definition to rehabilitation, is that sufficiently defined in Ed Code so we understand that it's when you're talking about going in and having a major modernization and not major maintenance type? Is that?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay.
Staff is saying it is covered.
Okay, that was my only concern. Other than that, I definitely prepared to support.
Ms. Carter.
I'm assuming that this means portables on the school grounds as well. Portable buildings.
Yes, yes, it should include them too if they're getting modernized as a whole. Yeah.
Because those are really dangerous to leave open.
That's where I taught for 10 years. Right. Portable.
Any other questions, comments?
So I want to clarify, following with Assemblyman Carter. So if a school is undergoing modernization, even though you don't modernize portables, they would put it on all the classroom doors, including the portables.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to close?
Just to go back and answer Mr. Norby's questions, and I know different school boards have different priorities, and the reason we bring it up at the state level is because we feel this is a priority to us, to our children, to our schools, and to our students, and to our faculty that work there. So sometimes you're right; it might not be a priority to that particular school board, but you never know; it might be a priority to some of the folks that live there, and. Not that they're saying that local school boards can't make their own decisions, but I feel that this is a priority of something that's occurring now. When I was and you're saying that the crime is being over-sensationalized, I disagree. As a former school teacher, and we had to go through lockdowns several times. I just left the classroom 6 years ago, and believe me, whenever we had lockdowns periodically. Sometimes, at one point I was doing a parent conference, and there was a shooting right. I was in the bungalow way in the back of the campus, away from the main building. And the main building didn't hear the shooting. I did, and by the time I was able to close the door and lock it and so forth, you had to use some sort of Allen wrench to unlock the push bar and lock it. It was a matter of a minute or two, and anybody could just jump over the fence back by the bungalow and got into the classroom. But again, I think they're happening. You just might not hear about them, and when you do hear about they might be over-sensationalized in the media, but it happens every day. So I wouldn't say that is it really necessary or not. I do think it is necessary, and our staff and students are in danger.
And that will be your close.
That will be my closing, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And the motion is due pass as amended to the Higher Education Committee, and it was moved by Mr. Amiano, seconded by Ms. Buchanan. Secretary, call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
No.
Norby, no. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Ing, aye. Gurel? Halderman? No. Halderman, no. Wagner? Wagner, abstain. Williams? Williams, aye.
7 votes. That bill is out. And now if you would present AB 86.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm here to present AB 86, which will create parity for classified employees when charter schools are established. AB 86 requires that at least one-half of permanent classified employees estimated to work at a charter school to sign a petition to start a new charter school. This bill also requires that at least 50% of permanent classified employees currently employed at a public school to sign a petition to convert an existing school into a charter school. Classified employees play an important role in our education system by assisting with special education classes, English learners, and a variety of other essential duties. It is clear that the creation of a charter school will impact classified employees, and I believe that they should be given a voice in the process. This bill is sponsored by the Service Employees International Union and is supported by the California School Employees Association and American Federation of State and County and Municipal Employees. Testifying today on behalf of AB 86 is Michelle Castro from SEIU, Josh Golka from CSEA, Ken Vega from California Labor Fed, and Seth Bramble from CTA. Thank you.
Great.
Right,
Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Michelle Castro with the Service Employees International Union. As stated, this is a simple parity bill. I wanted to address a couple of points made by the opposition. They state that classified employees are neither providers or consumers of educational services, and essentially they shouldn't be allowed to participate in the process. That's just untrue. Classified employees do participate in educational services. They're instructional aides, they're paraprofessionals. In addition, all employees at a school contribute to the educational environment and the overall school community. As consumers, they're parents, so they're certainly affected in both of those aspects. The opposition also points out that classified employees are a smaller group of employees. To somehow infer that just because you represent a smaller percentage of employees at a school site, that your voice shouldn't be validated and shouldn't be heard. This is, again, a simple parity bill, and we'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Joshua Golka with the California School Employees Association. For the reasons stated by Ms. Castro, and because this is just a simple parity bill, we would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Freitas with the California Federation of Teachers who represent teachers and classified employees. We agree with this bill. We agree with the process, and that the specific way that it separates 50% for the teachers and the classified is important to us. Thank you.
Thank
Madam Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, also here in support.
Madam Chair and members, Seth Bramble on behalf of the California Teachers Association. For the reasons previously stated, we're processing a support position on this.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
I'm in this sort of tweener place. This is Laura Preston with the Association of California School Administrators, and we actually have a supportive amended position. Our position is that we would prefer to have 50% of all the employees, not 50% of the classified and 50% of the certificated separated out. Part of the reason for that is, especially now with the 4 turnaround models that we have with the federal government has imposed on school districts. One of them is to convert schools or start a startup charter for school districts instead of having to remove your principal and half your staff and all the other egregious kinds of things. So we want to make it as easy as possible for school districts to convert, and so we think that having a 50% of the employees at those sites be able to vote instead of the additional requirement.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Rand Martin on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. I simply start by saying that one person's parity is another person's barrier. As the analysis rightly indicates, I think the core question you all are faced with is whether adding an additional petition requirement like this makes it harder to open a charter school. We would argue that it's hard enough to open a charter school now. If you add another body, whether it's half the workforce or a smaller percentage of the workforce, depending on the campus, that may be the case, it does raise the bar. It does make it harder to open a charter school. If you have parents who support it, if you have teachers that support it, and you have classifieds that don't support it, then the classifieds would have veto power over the ability of that charter school to open. We don't think that's a fair way to open charter schools. We do agree, however, and have advised the author's office of this, that classified employees do need a voice in this. We welcome that. We welcome our classified employees. Nothing that we have said relative to this bill is any reflection on the importance of classified employees to the overall campus experience. So we think that AXA's proposal to take 50% of all employees is a good tweener on this, a good compromise, and it makes sure that everybody's voice is heard, and we would encourage the committee to consider that and the author to consider that as an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from members? Ms. Buchanan.
So can you tell me how you feel about AXA's proposal to include 50% of the employees rather than to segregate it by employee group?
I don't like that amendment. I don't like the way it's structured. I think that having them separated is respecting each group. Each group has different needs. Each have bargaining agreements. They have different things they need to sort if they want to move forward with the charter. So I think by bulking them up together, they lose their voice. And the whole point of the bill is to create parity, giving them a voice in this process. And by just lumping them up, they lose their voice. We get nowhere. So I really think we need to respect that and have each body give their own vote and have their own say in this process.
Dr. Haldeman.
I have a question about the policy rationale.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of faith in teachers, and I'm not quite sure the policy rationale for giving part-time employees, custodial staff, as important as their roles are, why give them an equal voice in how the children are educated on parity with teachers? Teachers would seem to me far more qualified.
Having taught for 10 years before I came here, as a teacher, you look at every resource that you have. When that door closes and you have all those kids in front of you and you got to teach them, and you look at, okay, who could I count on? What resources are available to me? Classified employees play a big role in that. And I would never, and it goes back to who you see and what you see as a priority. From a teacher's perspective, we're all equal. We're out there to teach and educate these kids to our best of our ability with all the resources that we have. Classified employees, just like the principal and teachers, we all play that equal role. And I do think that they have and deserve an equal voice in the process of whatever happens and transpires at that school site. So with all due respect, I think that, I value that, and I think they really need to be a part of this process.
Any other questions? Mr. Wagner.
Typically, there are a lot more teachers in a facility than there are classified. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Depends on how the arrangement is. Some classifieds could be, on the very ends and so forth, and adds up. They might be equal, or sometimes they're more independent.
Typically, there are more actual teachers in a facility than classified, though.
It's hard for me to answer that right now, especially with all the layoffs and everything. I can't answer that. I think it depends on the school and how the arrangement is occurring. Yeah.
What is your answer to the issue of giving classified the veto power?
I don't. Everybody has a veto power. They want to not let the school proceed.
Classified doesn't have it right now.
They don't have a voice to even give that veto. They don't even have a position at the table.
Well, actually, the committee's analysis says that current law requires the district governing boards to consider the level of support for the charter petition by teachers and other employees of the district. So current law, according to the analysis of the committee, does give them a say. Don't you give them more of a say now, a veto?
Well, if that was the case, why would this bill be needed, right? The whole point is to make sure that they have a voice. Obviously, it's not clear. That's why we have that bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's your position that the staff analysis is incorrect, that employees of the district...
I'm saying that this bill is necessary to ensure that classified employees have a say on this process.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this bill? Moved by Mr. Amiano. Is there a second? Mr. Ring. I want to say that I'll be supporting the bill today. I don't think that this is a huge barrier, particularly starting up a new charter school. Most charter schools are relatively small, and certainly one would have to recruit support staff for that particular school, and so that support staff could come from other schools, from other jobs. So I don't think it's a tremendous barrier to charter schools, and I do think that the classified staff should have a voice in this process. So with that.